Who will you be voting for this upcoming election?
I'll be voting NDP.
Who will you be voting for this upcoming election in 2025?
Probably NDP.
NDP.
And why is that, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, for me, the Liberals don't focus enough on the housing issue, which is a big thing for me as a young person. And Conservative, as much as it does focus on housing, they don't necessarily align with like women's rights.
I'll be voting for Jagmeet Singh. Reasons why, I would say I liked his policy of making phone plans more affordable last year. I appreciated, I would hope that he's going to speak up more for Indigenous rights. I was disappointed when Trudeau 4 years ago promised to kind of expand Indigenous water infrastructure, and he just lied and got rid of that. So,
what's your take on Justin Trudeau?
He's taking all my tax money, like everything, like $200 per check. Like, that's crazy.
Who will you be voting for this upcoming election?
I'll be voting for the Conservatives this election.
Can you name me one accomplishment Justin Trudeau has done for this country?
No. Every time I see his face on my screen, all that comes out of his mouth is lies. And he's saying, oh, the Canadian population we're ready for this, we're ready for that. Like, we want this and we want that. The Canadian population is supporting this and that. Like, he's not actually listening to the Canadian population. He's just doing the things that he says we want, but we don't. And he doesn't focus on the things that we actually do want. And Pierre Poilievre is focusing on the things that we do want.
What do you think about the current state of Canada, where we're heading as a country? Today, we're at McMaster University. We're going to be going around asking the local students who they'll be voting for this upcoming election in 2025. Just like I always say, this is one of many election videos I'll be dropping on this channel until 2025. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and like this video so you don't miss out for any future videos just like this in the future. Anyways, let's go ask the college students to see what's going on with Canada and hear out the opinions and who they're voting for in 2025. What do you think about the current state we're heading as a country?
I mean, it's not looking really good right now. I feel like a lot of people are really struggling to make ends meet. And, as someone who works, I'm also, having a hard time dealing with like food prices and taxes and especially as a student, I'm trying to look at houses for, living in fourth year, and, it's starting to get a little bit unbearable, and it's not looking like that's going to be happening in the next year or so,
In your own opinion, how bad has that gotten since Justin Trudeau has been Prime Minister?
I mean, I would say that it was pretty optimistic in the beginning. He was definitely promising a lot of things, but as we've been seeing in the last couple years, those promises have not really been fulfilled. And I would just say it's generally gotten a lot worse. Yeah.
Can you name me one accomplishment Justin Trudeau has done for this country?
No.
And remember, the student will be coming back to her later on in the video. Who will you be voting for this upcoming election?
I'll be voting NDP.
And why is that, if you don't mind me asking?
I think they're the most likely to help solve the homelessness crisis and the climate crisis, and even just having representation in Parliament, even if they don't get a majority government, which I'm not expecting.
And why are you so excited to see the NDP, win this election?
Just that idea of representing different solutions for current issues, and I think the more different perspectives we have on the issue, the better our solutions are going to be.
What do you think about the current state of Canada, where we're heading as a country?
So if you imagine how Canada used to be, it was definitely the place to be. We had good healthcare, hardly any wait times. Everyone had a doctor. Everyone had a pretty good opinion of the educational system. People had money. The dollar went further. All of that. People had jobs. People were doing pretty well. You could get a house for good money. And I think we've just abused the wealth that we created over time. Like the past couple of generations, like since, let's say, I don't know, probably World War II, right? Those generations came back, they got to work, they built a lot of wealth in this country. Right? And we've gone the way of giving too much things for free. People don't expect to work as much anymore. We've bloated our government way too big, right? Just and anything the government does is inefficient and of poor quality, right? That takes a lot of money. It just feeds on our storehouse of wealth that we've had as a Western nation, as a developed Western nation. And if we keep going, like eventually we're not going to have much left. That's just how countries work. Like there are countries all over the world, like let's say Argentina. If you go there, their infrastructure is amazing. Like you look at it, it's a beautiful city. Just the buildings as they are, they look the beautiful architecture, and they're poor. Their currency is garbage. You can't buy anything of value with it. It's worth nothing, right? They used to be rich. They used to be at one point of like one of the most wealthy countries. It was off oil money or something, and now they tried the whole socialism thing.
And remember him as well. We will be coming back to him later on. What's your take on Canada? Where would you say that we're heading as a nation?
Honestly, I don't think it's like in the best path right now because everything's expensive. Gas prices are up. House prices are up. A lot of people are unemployed, so it's not looking that good right now.
Well said, I hear you. And my other question for you is, let's say, hypothetically speaking, let's say you had to vote today. Who would you vote for this upcoming election in 2025?
Probably Pierre Poilievre because I don't think Trudeau's getting it done. So yeah, I'd vote Pierre.
Do you think Pierre Poilievre could be a good leader for this country?
Yeah, he seems good in like what I see like on the news and on social media because I feel like he usually like in those debates in Parliament, he usually like gets the better of Justin Trudeau, so I think he's a better leader for their country.
And my other question for you is, since Justin Trudeau has been Prime Minister, have you seen any negative effects of his leadership in your community?
Not that I like see in my community like per se, but honestly like people blame him for like the gas prices being up because like the whole carbon tax thing, so maybe that's one thing, but yeah.
What's your thought on inflation?
I mean, we just came out of microecon class and like we're talking about that. And stuff's getting expensive and like I want to be able to like buy a house and buy better things like as I graduate so I just hope it's not like too bad once I graduate.
And my last question is, what would be your message to the people out there who are thinking about voting for Justin Trudeau for this upcoming election? Like, what would be a message for them to convert them to kind of vote for Pierre Poilievre?
Probably just do your own research. I wouldn't like say like I'm a heavy like Pierre Poilievre person. I don't know much myself either, but like from what I've seen, I think he's like the better option than Justin Trudeau. So yeah, definitely do your research.
Would you say that right now it's in between two of less evils?
Probably not like as bad as like for example like the States. I've seen that's worse over there, but I think Pierre Poilievre is definitely like the better option in my opinion. But
what do you think about Justin Trudeau? Like, what's your take on him?
I think he's a little superficial. Like, I know a lot of people used to like him, like when he was first running for Prime Minister. They're like, oh, he's a Trudeau. Like, this is awesome. Like, everyone loves his dad. I mean, to be fair, like, to be honest, a lot of how I feel about politics is like definitely influenced by my parents and friends. But like, I know there was a point where people are like, he's just making a lot of like false promises. I remember he said he wanted to get rid of first past the post voting, and then he just didn't, and which I don't know, and it kind of made me realize like how much can you expect from people really like.
Okay, and what's your thought on Pierre Poilievre?
Pierre Poilievre
For the Conservatives.
Oh, I actually don't know anything about him.
Oh, you don't know?
Yeah, sorry.
No worries. And my last question is, who will you be voting for this upcoming election in 2025?
Probably NDP.
And why is that?
Because I feel like it aligns the most with my personal views. Like, I haven't really been following politics in Canada specifically a lot lately. I feel like when we get closer to the election, I'll actually like do my research, or at least I hope I will. I don't know, maybe not. But yeah, I just feel like it matches what I feel the most. And also, I think it would be cool if a party other than Conservative or Liberal won, like kind of getting the two-party system knocked down a peg. That'd be interesting, at least. Yeah.
In your opinion, what makes you so excited to see the NDP, win for this coming up election?
I think, again, just that I like that they're more left-leaning. I feel like they stand for more than the Liberal Party does. I feel like the Liberal Party really likes to kind of pander to both sides. Yeah. And I mean, in a lot of ways, so does the Conservative Party. But I feel like NDP is maybe a little, like maybe they stand for something a bit more.
Who will you be voting for this upcoming election in 2025?
I think it's going to be the Conservatives. Pierre Polyev.
And why do you say that if you don't mind me asking?
I think we're all tired of Justin Trudeau, and it's time for a conservative, common sense plan.
And can you name me one accomplishment Trudeau's government has done for this country?
Done for this country. Oh, you're putting me on the spot. I don't know. Well, he did implement that $10 daycare, what is it, like rebate or whatever, a day for parents during COVID. So that kind of helped bring daycare costs down a little bit.
And what makes you so excited to see the Conservatives, win this election coming up?
I think we don't need carbon tax anymore, and I think they're going to make Canada more affordable. It's going to be better off without Trudeau.
And since Justin Trudeau has been Prime Minister, what are some negative effects you have seen, of his leadership in your community?
I think he's mismanaging our tax dollars. Inflation is taking forever to go down. It's still up. He needs to do better.
And my last question is, what's the message you have, for the people who are thinking about voting for Justin Trudeau? What's the message that you have to kind of convert them to vote for the Conservatives?
Well, I think you have to look at the facts. You have to look at what has happened over the last 9 years, and make your choice carefully. Justin Trudeau, I think he has a lot of work to do. I think the Conservatives can make a change.
Based off with everything you just said, who will you be voting for this upcoming election?
I'll be voting for the Conservatives this election.
So Pierre Poilievre.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
And why do you say that?
I've been watching a lot of the debates that have been happening in Parliament, and especially knowing something as difficult as the carbon tax.
Yep.
That's been a big issue that's been kind of on the table there. And so I think that after how many years has it been since he was elected, I would say that at that point, it's just become too much, and it's time to have someone else who's going to at least have something new to bring to the table, and not just kind of promising the same old stuff and not delivering. At least having a new face and a new party in the Parliament will be somewhat of a change, and it'll be a chance to at least have something happen, as opposed to continuously having things be stalled now.
In your opinion, what makes Pierre Poilievre qualified to become the next Prime Minister?
I feel like he's had a lot more experience in Parliament as opposed to Justin Trudeau. I think a lot of the reason why he was voted in the first place was because of his dad. And obviously, there was the whole favoritism thing.
Can I also add something there real quick? Some Canadians also said the only reason why he got in, it was because of marijuana.
I would definitely agree with that too. Yeah, that was a very big point that he was making during that time. Interestingly enough, I think it's now it's shifted completely, because he used to be on this whole marijuana point, and that was kind of his main strong point. But now Pierre Poilievre, his main point is the carbon tax. So it's kind of completely done a 180. And now that marijuana's already here and everything, now they're okay, we got to get him out. Carbon tax is more important. And I think that's pretty interesting.
I'll be voting for Jagmeet Singh. Reasons why, I would say I liked his policy of making phone plans more affordable last year. I appreciated, I would hope that he's going to speak up more for Indigenous rights. I was disappointed when Trudeau 4 years ago promised to kind of expand Indigenous water infrastructure, and he just lied and got rid of that. So that kind of made me a little disillusioned with the Liberal Party. And I appreciate Wab Kinew in Manitoba is kind of giving me a little hope, especially around kind of investigating residential schools. So I'm looking forward to that. So I'm hoping to vote for NDP to look at more support for Indigenous communities, more affordability, and hopefully lessening student debt as well.
Who would you vote for this upcoming election in 2025?
NDP.
And why is that, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, for me, the Liberals don't focus enough on the housing issue, which is a big thing for me as a young person. And Conservative, as much as it does focus on housing, they don't necessarily align with like women's rights. I feel like they aim more to take away that, and that's not something I want. And I feel like NDP falls pretty well in line with everything.
And what makes you so excited to see the NDP win for this upcoming election?
Just mainly housing, because I feel like it's a really big issue for me. Just looking towards buying a house in the future, which is something that's definitely coming up.
What would be your biggest fear if Justin Trudeau gets re-elected for this upcoming election?
I'm very worried that we're going to start having more homeless people on the streets. I'm very worried that the drug problem is going to get more out of control. Especially the drug problem. And I'm very worried that I'm not going to be able to afford things anymore. And I'm very, very worried about not being able to have a house in the future.
And my other question is, what's your message for the people out there who are planning on voting for Justin Trudeau? Like, what's the message that you say to them to kind of convert them to vote for Pierre Poilievre?
Honestly, what has he really done? What has he really done? Like, I was not able to think off the top of my head of something that he's actually done. And I'm worried that he's going to continue to just make empty promises as he has been doing this entire time. So why not have somebody who actually has plans and who wants to make a change for the working class? Why not have somebody who's going to potentially do that rather than have someone who keeps doing the same bad things over and over again?
With Justin Trudeau, we have seen that he has gave so much money to Ukraine. And why do you think he has done that?
I think it's to look good in the international community. I'm half Ukrainian myself, so I've had a lot of, emotional connection to this, but I think seeing how he's been neglecting the problems in his own country and then just sending money off to Ukraine, I completely understand that it's a very difficult subject and the situation is very bad right now in Ukraine. I think that it's kind of like, I don't know what that expression is, the one where it's like, fix your own stuff first and then.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I would say that I think would be what he needs to focus on right now, because we have people dying. We have people who are on food stamps. We have people who then they weren't before. We have people who are on the streets who weren't before. And I feel like if he's focusing more on these problems here and then sending money off to Ukraine, I'll be a lot more happy about that.
In your opinion, what makes you so excited to see the NDP win for this upcoming election?
Well, I suppose my family's always kind of been more left-leaning. I suppose more has to do with I'm obviously a bit of a bias there, but I kind of grew up in a very conservative community. I saw a lot of things I wasn't too fond of. I saw a lot of discrimination and stuff like that. So I'm hoping that the NDP party will be more inclusive and more diverse in that regard as well. In terms of excitement, I'm just hoping for a new direction, I think that a lot of people, and we saw this with Stephen Harper too, I think people are just kind of fed up with the current state of things and they just want change one way or another. So I'm hoping that it'll just be NDP and they'll win the election as well, is my hope.
I hear you. And my other question is, what's your opinion on Justin Trudeau, if you don't mind me asking that question?
Yeah, no worries. I think he gets a lot of hate. I would say he's a little too much, especially from the Conservatives. A lot of the stuff you're saying is a little outlandish. But I would agree he's failed to deliver on a lot of things, like the one I brought up, being obviously providing water infrastructure. I remember even before I went to McMaster, I remember hearing about how local indigenous communities had to come to here to get water, and I believe that's still true to this day. So we've seen no progress whatsoever, and it's not like we're in Nunavut already here. This is Southern Ontario. So I'd say, yeah, that's why I'm fed up with Justin Trudeau. I think he's backed out of most things he's promised. He also promised to kind of release more federal archive information, and he didn't do that as well. So there's kind of a lack of accountability as well.
In your own opinion, based off of what you have seen on social media or heard maybe off your friends or your parents, can you name me one accomplishment Justin Trudeau has done for this country?
What has Justin Trudeau done? He legalized marijuana. That is something he did, and let's not forget that. But what else has he done? Now, I don't keep up too much with social media, I'll be honest. But if I'm thinking about policy, One thing that I do enjoy, he moved in, I'm not saying, obviously I've complained a lot about his issues with Indigenous people, but he moved in a better direction than Stephen Harper at the very least. So I think we've had some progress towards reconciliation. I mean, I think we've seen, you know, a little more opening up about residential schools, a little more opening up about Indigenous history in our school curriculum. But, you know, I would say are his biggest achievements for me. Let's ignore the one about legalizing drugs, but more so, I think we've seen some expansion of, you know, greater inclusion for Indigenous people, but I'd like to see more.
And if you don't mind me adding this, what's your take on Pierre Poilievre? Since we're talking about the Liberals, I feel like I should just add that in too.
He's a career politician. They don't know what they're doing, in my personal opinion. From what I see, they do a lot of short-term gains, a lot of long-term issues. For example, I'll give you an example. When Doug Ford sold the 407, that was a huge mistake. We were losing out on tons of, you know, cash flow from that. You get, you know, maybe you get a large sum, like $100 million or something. I don't know the exact amount, I'm sorry. But you might get one big amount of cash now, but they're not thinking ahead, realistically. When you keep on slashing stuff and cutting back, it's much easier to cut back than it is to build up these support systems again. You see the same thing in Hamilton, right? But 25 years ago, we had our whole social service system destroyed here, and that's why we have such high homelessness, you know, and people don't seem to understand that. So I'd say my issue with him is, once again, he seems like a career politician, and I don't think he's thinking far enough ahead. When you say slash, though that still affects people. There's still people at the bottom line there. And, you know, when you're talking about privatization, you're not thinking far enough ahead about how you might get money now, but what about those continuous gains that you've now lost?
What he's done so far, it's not cutting it. Most definitely. I think that he says a lot of things and brings on a lot of hope, but when it comes to coming through with them, he falls short. Yeah.
Let's say if you had to vote today, who would you vote for this upcoming election in 2025?
I'm not really sure about who the candidates are.
What's your thought with the migrant crisis going on in this country?
I have a lot of opinions on that subject. I'm just going to keep it short, I guess.
That's good. Go all out. Go all out.
My parents are immigrants, and they immigrated way back when. And so they've always had a strong support for immigration and everything, but even they can see now that the problem has become way too much. We don't have an infrastructure that can support many people coming in at once. And so that's why you see like people living 10 to a house, and it's starting to become a problem where we simply can't support with this economy that we have right now. We can't support this many people. Our infrastructure for even our Canadian population as it was not good enough. And especially coming off COVID and everything, it's really just, it hasn't built back up to the level where we can afford to take in so many people. You know, I'm all for immigration, but I think that it should be a little more controlled, seeing as we don't really have those supports, those structural supports to have that many people.
What's your thought on Justin Trudeau?
I don't think he's as strong as he used to be, especially with all the new immigration laws, not new immigration laws, but with everything that's been happening in Brampton especially. Like I'm an Indian as well, and I live there, and it's kind of like ruining our reputation as like Indians. So it's kind of weird to see all this stuff, and it's bad for our reputation as well. Yeah, that's about it.
And my question for you is, why do you think Justin Trudeau has brought so many immigrants into this country?
Well, I think he did it for a good reason. He wants to boost his votes early on, and he wants to show that he's doing good for the country. But I just feel like it's too much now. And like it's putting a negative toll on the country as well. As much as good he's done, it's also negative as well, if that makes sense.
Based off from what you have seen on social media, who would you be voting for this upcoming election?
Honestly, right now, I don't have much information to decide that. Like, I will be voting for sure, but I need to do more research and conduct more, like, see what everyone is saying before I actually make a decision for myself.
Why do you think so many Canadians hate Justin Trudeau?
I feel like a lot of people hate Justin Trudeau because of the carbon taxes and how he just keeps increasing it every year.
And how has that personally affected you as a student?
Well, as a student, I commute here. I don't live on residence, so like I also have a car that takes premium gas, so it just affects it because I'm paying 35 cents a liter on gas, just taxes, which I could be saving for like food or other expenses.
Based off on what you have seen on social media, who do you think has more senses when it comes to Justin Trudeau or Pierre Poilievre?
I feel like for the census right now, both parties have their strengths and their weaknesses. Right now, the Conservatives, I feel like, are getting a little more attention, and people want to vote for them. But there's also downsides for both parties and good sides for both as well.
I hear you. Would you say that it's kind of voting as for in between of two of less evils, in your opinion? Is that what you say?
Yeah.
So would you say like back then it was like the American dream, basically? Right?
Yeah. I talked to my dad like yesterday. He was saying 1980, something like that, like decades ago, right? Like way before our time. He could buy a house for like $40,000, like a 3-bedroom. And I'm like, oh man, if only you knew to buy like 10. Like it was, you know, we had room. People will blame the pandemic or whatever it might be. There's plenty of reasons that people might say, oh, we can't build houses because of this. But I don't know, like people got back from war in World War II, 1945, right? And then, you know, the baby boomer generation came in. When they started turning 18, like if you see the demographic charts, like just how much larger the baby boomer boomers, that's why we call them that, how much larger that generation was compared to before and after. When they came of age, they had their own little housing crisis and they got to work. They built houses. The government wasn't so big. Things were more efficient. People trusted each other. And society was more cohesive, right? So things just worked faster. You can talk to people. You're mostly on the same page at whether it's at work or a government employee. Things just got done faster. So you apply for a building permit, you get a place zoned. It's just quicker. Things weren't bloated, right? You don't have to get 100 permits to do a little building. And now it just it takes too long. It takes too much money to get permits.
And my question for you is, in your own opinion, how bad has that gotten since Justin Trudeau has been Prime Minister?
I've seen the graphs, you know, like I guess I can't be sure of the source because like I've seen, you know, Pierre Poilievre runs ads and on his social media, you can see like the inflation curve, like right at 2016, it starts creeping up and it only gets worse. The housing prices, rent prices, crime, just all keeps going up. So like he never had any real experience or real education, right? He was already supposedly not performing very well as a high school teacher, and then we made him our prime minister. So,
and my question for you is, who will you be voting for this upcoming election in 2025?
Well, without a doubt, it's Poilievre.
And why do you say that?
Let's see. Okay.
What makes him qualified to be the next prime minister?
I'll try and be quick, but let's start with what the other options are. Assuming Trudeau gets to run again, because they might replace him, like what he's been doing is not working, right? Like people in general aren't happy with the situation. The dollar doesn't go as far, and things are expensive, right? So he's just gonna do the same things. Because honestly, he wasn't never educated, so I don't believe he actually has a philosophy when it comes to economy. Like the budget will balance itself. That doesn't make sense. Like who do you know who just like spends money when he thinks it's like nice, when it feels good to do so, and his finances are like great? No, it takes like special planning. When it comes to Poilievre, sorry if this is getting long-winded, but he has been housing minister in the past. He's been a politician for a very long time, and some people say that's not a good thing. Like he's never had his own private sector job, so he might not have as much everyday experience and be able to relate with the average Canadian, which I understand that as a valid critique. I do think he has people around him that can support him with his ideas and get things done. Like when he says he just wants to cut down the bureaucracy when it comes to getting permits to build houses, like why is that a bad idea? Or you know, like because he says in Vancouver it's probably over exaggerated in Vancouver, but he says it's close to half the price of a new home. The permits, it's not the labor, it's not the materials, it's the permits. Okay, so getting permission from some guy at a desk at a computer, that costs them most of the money to build a house. That makes no sense, right? In no functional society does that make sense. What else? And Trudeau's already been stealing his ideas. Like he said, I'm gonna put, like a year ago, I remember this, like I saw someone point this out, and I've seen the article of a year ago, like in August 2023, he said, I'm gonna put a certain tariff on Chinese-made steel and aluminum, right? A month ago, Trudeau comes and puts a tariff on, same tariff on Chinese steel and aluminum, and says it's his own great idea to keep private sector steel jobs in Canada. It's like, Trudeau's always already taking some of his ideas because this guy might actually have some economic training
Yeah, I hear you.
ideas. Right?
Okay, I want to add something to this. There's a saying that Pierre Poilievre says is axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, stop the crime, bring it home. Do you believe that Pierre Poilievre will stand on what he says, or he's just saying that just to get into office?
Okay, the carbon tax is the easiest thing he could get for political points that he could possibly do. It's arbitrarily imposed. It does not stop climate change in any sort of practical way. Like Canada is like 1 or 2% of global emissions of CO2, and China just built like 100 coal factories, like coal burning plants. Right, like we're not the big players when it comes to CO2, and arbitrarily taxing our gas, which is a tax on every level of the entire supply chain. Anytime a good gets produced using gas generators and then transported on trucks, it's a tax on every level that's arbitrarily imposed, and that's not going to fix climate change. It's a total just PR stunt. Easiest thing he could do, and it will immediately make gas cheaper. It'll, with time, make goods perhaps more cheaper. Goods don't tend to get cheaper. They tend to only get more expensive. You can only slow down how bad it gets, but you know, we can only hope. Axe the tax. What does he say? Axe the tax, bring the homes. I think he can bring more homes. You know, he does. He wanted to link. I guess you can tell I'm a bit of a follower of what he says. He wanted to link the amount of federal tax dollars a city gets with how much homes they build, pretty much with how many homes they build, right? So if you don't build homes, if you don't get the job done, you're not going to get paid. Just like anyone else, right? If we don't show up to work, we're not going to get paid. We don't get paid at the beginning of the week, and then we get to not show up half of the days at work, and then still to keep the money. That's how the government works, right? It makes no sense, right? So he has some practical ideas if you just hear him out.